My overly kind-hearted husband has been sending money to his parents for 20 years under the guise of filial piety. Even though our household finances are tight, we've never received a single word of thanks. Instead, we hear cold remarks like, "What do you think you can do with just $1,000? And recently, I discovered a shocking truth. That money was secretly being funneled to my sister-in-law Carol. "If you buy us a new house, we'll stop asking for money," they said, ignoring my husband's kindness and making unreasonable demands. I finally exploded with anger. "Fine. We'll buy you a house." My name is Ashley, and I'm 49 years old. I married my husband Elliot 24 years ago when I was 25. Despite many ups and downs, we're still a happy couple. We recently talked about enjoying our time together now that the kids are grown. But there is a significant issue. Both Elliot and I want to save for our retirement, but the biggest obstacle is the money Elliot sends to his parents. For 20 years, he has been sending them money every month. And it's not a small amount, it's $1,000. It's a significant amount of money. If we were wealthy, it might be different, but we both work and still don't have much leeway. Especially when the kids were younger, it was tough. During those difficult times, I asked if we could reduce or stop the payments. But they got furious, accusing us of abandoning them. Even when I explained that our children's education expenses were high, they didn't understand. "You owe everything to us. Your marriage, your children, it's all because of us. You ungrateful brats." While not entirely wrong, did they really need to hold it over our heads like that? How many times have I heard that? Elliot said he would handle it, but we're partners. I took on the task of sending the money, asking Elliot to manage our household finances. Elliot strongly opposed it, but since I earned a little more, I decided to bear the burden. We've somehow managed to get by financially. Even though I've been yelled at by his parents, they have never once thanked me. "Your income exists for us. Be grateful for how we raised you and send us money. Your useless self managed to get married thanks to us." They constantly say terrible things to Elliot. Are they really his parents? Sometimes I get angrier than him. But Elliot just laughs it off, saying, "They've always been like this." Seeing him so resigned breaks my heart. Even though Elliot doesn't stand up to his parents, I can't complain as his wife, so I've spent 20 years silently suffering. If only his sister Carol supported the payments, it would be easier if we split the cost. Unlike him, Carol has never been berated by their parents. On the contrary, she's adored for being beautiful and kind. "She's just like me when I was young," says Susan, his mother. "She's a blessing just by being born," says Jeff, his father. The stark contrast in treatment infuriates me. But once again, Elliot calms me down, so I've never lashed out. Isn't he too kind? I fell in love with his kindness, but he should be angrier. Elliot takes his role as the eldest son too seriously. No one cares about that anymore. I've heard him tell our son not to worry about taking care of us in the future. Maybe because he's suffered so much, he doesn't want our son to go through the same. Elliot might understand, but I don't. At least once, I wanted Susan to express her gratitude to Elliot. When we were alone, I asked her, "About the money he sends, could you occasionally express your thanks to Elliot? About the money he sends, could you occasionally express your thanks to Elliot?" Susan looked completely baffled. Then she said, "Why should I thank my son for sending money to his parents? It's what he's supposed to do. Why should I thank my son for sending money to his parents? It's what he's supposed to do." She couldn't understand what I was saying at all. In fact, she seemed to think I was the one being unreasonable. I was absolutely stunned by her reaction. I was truly at a loss for words. But for her daughter, Carol, she would express gratitude for even the smallest things. Despite being so busy, she still comes to visit us. What a thoughtful and kind daughter she is. By the way, Carol visits her parents' home maybe once a year, usually for just a day. In contrast, we visit at least once a month and are frequently summoned for various tasks. Typically, we are asked to do this and that, and never once have we been thanked. Isn't such blatant favoritism shocking? However, judging from his demeanor, it seems he has been treated this way for a long time. Supporting his stories, the photo album showed a young Elliot with a sad expression. His clothes were often hand-me-downs or ill-fitting. In contrast, Carol always wore pretty, neat clothes. There were no birthday photos of Elliot, but lavish photos of Carol's birthdays were pasted in his album. He was told he had to attend public high school and wouldn't be given any money for college, so he used scholarships to get through. In contrast, Carol was allowed to go to any high school she wanted, entering a private one. She was also given money for college, but partied too much and dropped out without graduating. Her parents didn't scold her at all and just dismissed it with a "well, it can't be helped." Meanwhile, they told Elliot it was foolish to go to college if he had to repay scholarships. Moreover, Elliot was made to send money to his parents, while no demands were placed on Carol. Not that she could afford to send money, as she quit jobs easily, couldn't hold even part-time work, and ended up unemployed. Despite this, her parents still adored her. When I went to introduce myself before our wedding, Elliot's mother said, "Please give our daughter an allowance every month," leaving me speechless. After Carol got married and moved out, Elliot was commanded to send money to his parents, leaving me dumbfounded. Despite all this, Elliot didn't abandon his parents, which I found commendable rather than pitiful. Still, as someone not related by blood, I couldn't suggest cutting ties. It's a delicate and complicated issue that has long troubled me. Even during the difficult times of raising our children, Elliot continued sending money. He truly deserves some appreciation. But no matter what I say or do, Elliot's parents never express any gratitude. They firmly believe they deserve the money. One day, Susan called. Usually, his parents are completely indifferent to our lives. They don't care even when we have children. Their only concern is the money. Our children naturally grew distant from such grandparents. Whenever they contacted us, it was always for some favor or additional money. Hearing my phone ring, I had a bad feeling but reluctantly answered. "Hello. Hey. What's going on with this month's money?" Without even a greeting, Susan started right away. I sighed at her usual rudeness, unable to show her my angry eyes. "Payments are always on the 30th. That's tomorrow," I replied. But Susan said, "I don't care about that. Add $500 more this month." "What? You mean $1,500? That's a bit." As soon as I hesitated, Susan snapped. "What do you think parents are?" she yelled. Well, this is typical. She thinks that if she intimidates me, I'll comply. But after 24 years of marriage, I'm used to their attitude. What do I think of parents? Parents are parents. Then just send the money. No, I am sending money. I said, increase it. No, I'm telling you we can't. Increase it. No, no way. She must have sensed my light laughter because she snapped. This is pointless. And hung up. I thought I handled it sincerely, but I guess it didn't come through. Talking over the phone is hard. That evening, I told him about the call. You're the only one who can stand up to Mom like that. You're quite the innocent one. He chuckled. Innocent? I'm not being innocent. I'm just saying what he can't. If we increase it once, they'll keep asking for the same. We need to save for our own future, so make sure you refuse. Yeah, I get it. He nodded, but he seemed worried. And his worry was justified. Dad said to make it $1,500 from next month. Elliot told me. I couldn't help but exclaim. I knew it. You didn't agree, did you? I told him it was impossible. What did your dad say? He said, your kids are grown, so you should have extra money. What do you think parents are for? I can picture his face saying that. Ha ha ha. It's not funny. I glared at him, and he stopped laughing. Absolutely refuse. Yeah. But a few days later, on a holiday, his parents showed up early in the morning, leading to a mild argument. Increase the payment, you devil wife. Apparently, they thought I was the reason the payment increase was stopped. So, I handed Susan a lit incense stick. Here you go. What's this? Use the smoke to drive away the devil wife. Susan blew the smoke right at my face. Just because I said you could use it doesn't mean you should aim at my face. I blew some smoke back at her, saying, Susan's a devil too. Ah. Stop it. It's fine. While Susan and I had fun with our little devil exorcism game, Elliot and Jeff had a serious conversation. Why do you need so much money? You should still have your retirement fund and get pensions. Elliot asked. With rising prices, it's not enough. Jeff replied. We need to save for our own retirement too. Elliot said. What retirement? First, you should worry about your parents' retirement. Jeff yelled. Like Susan, Jeff thought yelling would get his point across. Elliot has faced unreasonable treatment like this since he was a child. Blowing smoke at Susan, I cheered for him in my heart. Maybe my encouragement worked because Elliot stood firm. It's not possible. If you really need money, ask Carol. Oh, that's a fair point. I thought, feeling impressed. But Susan retaliated by blowing smoke in my face, so I fanned it away with a newspaper. Jeff, however, got inexplicably angry. You can't ask Carol for help. You can't ask Carol for help. She's struggling, so we thought we'd send her some money. Oh, no. Have you ever heard such a foreboding oh, no? Wait, what does that mean? I looked at Susan in shock. Elliot was also frozen in surprise. What does that mean? Were you giving our money to Carol? Elliot asked directly. What's the problem? We can do whatever we want with the money. It's my Ashley's money, right? What's mine is mine. I can spend it however I like. Then I might as well send the money directly to Carol. Why are you taking credit? Carol doesn't even know the money is from us, does she? Of course not. A father wants to look good to his daughter. Don't mess with me. Elliot couldn't take it anymore and got angry. All this time, we had been sending money for his parents. Even though it came from my salary, it was essentially our family's money. We couldn't go on vacations as a couple because we had to save to send them money. This was too much. Tears finally welled up in his eyes. These tears were more out of frustration than sadness. As his wife, I understood his feelings well. Elliot had always been treated differently from his sister. Despite that, he continued to send money for his parents, only to find out it was for their daughter. No wonder even the mild-mannered Elliot was angry. He silently cried, overwhelmed by the shock. I placed a gentle hand on his back and glared fiercely at his parents. You two are too much. For 20 years, we've been sending you money. You've treated Elliot terribly while favoring Carol, and you never even thanked us. And now you want more? This is outrageous. There was no need to hold back anymore. For Elliot's sake, I needed to be clear. Instead of being worried, they laughed. Pretending to be high and mighty over a mere $1,000. They probably believed their kind son would never abandon them. And they weren't entirely wrong. But Elliot had me, his precious wife, beside him. Susan laughed at my glare. Your father is right. Acting high and mighty over $1,000. If you want to talk, why don't you buy us a new house first? What? Do that, and we'll never ask for money again. But you can't, can you? So the increase is non-negotiable. Fine. I'll do it. What? To dismiss Susan's unreasonable demand, I nodded. They were still puzzled. Fine. We'll buy you a house. Really? They were astonished by my words. Elliot looked at me in shock too. Please don't look at me like that. It's not a big deal. I thought, smiling confidently. A few months later, we invited them to their new house. Here it is, your new home. This will be your final residence, I said with a big smile as I showed them around. It was a very large house. It was a single-story house, but it was more than enough for a couple. What is this? Susan's voice was full of astonishment. I spread my arms proudly. Look at this vast property. A garage that can fit multiple cars. You can turn it into a farm, focus on gardening, or even raise a bunch of animals like goats. Wait, hold on. And the size of this house. Look at this. It even has a fireplace. Wait, hold on. And the best part is this mountain behind and the clear stream nearby. Jeff can gather firewood from the mountain, and Susan can do laundry by the river. Wait! This house was built over 200 years ago, with no electricity or gas. It's the perfect place to enjoy the lifestyle of those times. Wait! Susan, her face turning red, interrupted my increasingly excited speech. What is it, Susan? There's no need to get so excited. You're the one who's excited. First of all, where is this place? It's a house deep in the mountains. When I proudly looked at Susan, she was dumbfounded for a moment before realizing and yelling. Why did you find such an inconvenient place? And what is this old house? I was expecting a new house since you said you were building one, but this is clearly used. What are you talking about? We rebuilt it using all the old materials. It's a new house. So, you dismantled an old house that couldn't be lived in and rebuilt it with the materials? It can be lived in now, so there's no problem. No. At least get gas and electricity installed. Why? Why? You! Susan looked at me with a face of utter defeat. What? You said to build a house, so I did. Why are you dissatisfied? I'm only dissatisfied. What extravagant people, I thought, looking at Elliot. Elliot had a very complicated smile. But the deal was that if we gave you a house, the payments would stop, right? What? What? No what? Jeff, is that okay? When you said a new house, I thought you meant a brand new house with new walls and modern facilities. Isn't this a newly built house? I glared at Jeff, indicating not to argue about the details. He fell silent. We can't live here. Just take us back to our old home. Jeff looked stunned, and Susan was yelling. I laughed and said, It's okay. What's okay? Nothing is okay. In gratitude for reusing this house in such a remote mountain area, the previous owner left behind a lot of furniture. You can start living here immediately. Oh. And the vegetables in the field behind the house are ready for harvest. What? So, let's be self-sufficient. What? Susan, living here will make you healthier. This house definitely has a guardian spirit, and your luck will improve. A guardian spirit? Are you serious? I'm always serious. When I said it clearly, she looked very displeased. Why? It's a 30-minute walk to the bus stop from here. With that, I left with Elliot. I'm so happy they were moved to tears. I'm glad we splurged and bought the house. The land was a bargain, and the previous owner covered the reconstruction costs. They must have been touched. Elliot whispered, "Your innocence is scary." But I pretended not to hear. Anyway, I fulfilled his parents' wish by buying them a house. It's not perfect, but it's livable, so it should be fine. Finally, the payments would stop, and we could start saving for ourselves. Happy. One day, I got a call. It was from Jeff. "What is this all about?" He yelled suddenly. What is all this about, really? It seemed his parents couldn't adapt to life in the mountains and eventually returned to their old house. Well, that's their choice, and they're free to do as they please. I tried to sell that house to get some money, but it won't sell, he said. Well, given its location, it won't be easy to find a buyer. That's not the issue. I spoke with a realtor, and there's a market for people who dream of country living. There's interest. Oh, really? It seems there are people who want to retire quietly in the countryside or to escape the exhaustion of city life. But it still wouldn't sell, and Jeff was yelling. What's going on? It's not even in my name. Of course not. I could imagine Jeff's face turning red on the other end of the line. I lowered my voice, feeling like he was saying something absurd. What? Did you intentionally put the house in your name? Yes, the house in the mountains we bought for them is actually in my name. I don't see what's so strange about that. Is there something wrong with that? Of course there is. That house is mine, right? So why isn't it in my name? Because I bought it. What? It's in the purchaser's name. What's strange about that? What's strange about it? What? Jeff's voice was filled with despair. It's really puzzling. I tilted my head. I bought the house and allowed you to live there. It's a simple matter. I asked you to buy it. So I did. No, I mean... I could feel Jeff's frustration over the phone. But honestly, I didn't understand what he was saying. Originally, Jeff wasn't involved in negotiating or signing any documents for the house. Why did he think it would be in his name? It's odd. Anyway, change the name to mine immediately. I'll sell that inconvenient house. Why? Living with the house spirits is a rare opportunity. There are no house spirits. If there were, I'd want to live there even less. What a luxurious complaint. I can't understand the problem with living in a rent-free, mortgage-free house. You want to give money to Carol, right? Then a mountain house with low utility costs is perfect. That's right, Carol. Carol is another problem. Jeff suddenly raised his voice, remembering something. She asked for help with a down payment on a new house. Ah, I see. What does that have to do with us? Elliot is fed up with his parents' blatant favoritism. Carol, expecting her parents' support, has become estranged from Elliot. So I don't care about her situation. help her if you want. I plan to sell the mountain house for the money, but that plan is ruined. You take responsibility and prepare the money. No! I immediately refused and hung up. The phone rang again. Annoyed, I answered, and Jeff shouted, "If you refuse, put the house in my name." Again, I responded, "No!" He kept calling, demanding money or a name change. Each time, I firmly said no until Jeff, on the verge of tears, begged, "Please, give me the money." Matching his tone, I also tearfully replied, "No." After that, the phone calls stopped. That night, Elliot came home from work, laughing as he told me that his parents called the office, asking him to do something about his innocent wife. Of course, I have no intention of doing anything. Elliot smiled. However, they started sending letters and visiting our house, persistently asking for the house, money, or a name change. So I finally said, "I will give you a brand new house this time." And the constant demands stopped. Some time later, Elliot and I visited his parents' home. "This time, it's really a brand new house, right?" they asked, and I nodded firmly. "Yes, I built it myself." Jeff looked satisfied and exchanged a glance with Susan. Well. By the way, where is it? We don't want another house deep in the mountains." "Don't worry. You can place it anywhere you like, in the city or wherever you prefer." "Anywhere we like, what do you mean?" Jeff couldn't understand what I was saying and asked again, with a puzzled look on his face. "So, you can place it anywhere you like?" I repeated. "Place it? What does that mean?" As they both tilted their heads in confusion, I placed the package I had secretly brought in front of them. "What is this?" Susan screamed at its size. "This is a house that will surely excite you, Mom." "Huh?" I opened the large package. What appeared was a big mansion, in miniature. "What is this? A dollhouse? Really?" Jeff was astonished. Susan's eyes widened. I puffed out my chest proudly at the stunned pair. "Isn't it amazing? I made this." "What?" "I'm good at crafts. Making dioramas is my hobby." "What?" "This is a genuine house I built. Please accept it." "What?" A dollhouse that would make any little girl overjoyed. I thought I did a pretty good job, and they were both speechless. "I'm glad you love it so much you're at a loss for words. Especially you, Mom. Enjoy playing with it and feel young again." Leaving the two at a loss for words, Elliot and I left his parents' house. They seemed pleased. "I'm glad," I said to Elliot, who once again remarked, "Your innocence is terrifying." Innocent? That's rude, it's all intentional. I didn't say that out loud but stuck my tongue out in my mind. After that, they continued to contact us about various things, but we ignored them all. Even when they showed up at our house, we continued to ignore them, and eventually, they stopped. Then, one day, a relative called. Apparently, his parents were in financial trouble and begging for money from everyone. It turned out they had sold their previous house to help Carol with her new home to impress her. They were supposed to move in with her, but lost contact as soon as they gave her the money. In other words, they were used by Carol. Like parent, like child. I wondered if Elliot was a genetic anomaly. Abandoned by their daughter and cut off by their son and his wife, they were left to beg from relatives who turned them down. In the end, they returned to the house in the mountains. Well, at least it's a shelter from the rain. I'm glad the house I bought served its purpose in an unexpected way. As for Carol, deceiving her own parents was indeed a devilish act, and it seems God noticed. Pampered and spoiled by her parents, she ended up divorced after a big fight with her husband. The reason for the fight was her infidelity. The money her parents gave her was actually used for her affair. Once again, like parent, like child. It's a mystery how Elliot turned out to be such a decent person. Maybe it's because he wasn't properly raised by those parents. Carol, with nowhere to go, moved in with her parents in the mountain house. However, there's no way the spoiled daughter and those eccentric parents could get along well. Carol, who has never worked a proper job, now relies solely on her parents' pension for a poor living. As for me, I'm free from the curse of those dreadful payments and liberated from Elliot's parents' influence, feeling like I can finally breathe deeply for the first time in a while. With some financial freedom, Elliot and I excitedly planned a trip, looking through piles of travel brochures. "Ashley, I'm sorry for everything." "Thank you," Elliot said, surprising me. Seeing his relieved face, I nodded with a smile. "Let's spend a joyful retirement together, my love." His gentle smile, which I love so much, beamed brightly. I emerged from the shadow of the telephone pole, noticing a woman holding a long metal rod in her hand. The rod glistened in the setting sun, and my feet were frozen in fear. The woman raised the rod and screamed at me. "If only you didn't exist!" I turned my back and desperately ran away, but I don't remember much after that. All I recall is a strong impact on my head and the feeling of the hard ground as I collapsed. When I came to, I found myself lying on a hospital bed, with an elderly doctor peering down at me. The treatment seemed to be over, and the doctor was calm. When I asked where I was, the doctor told me the name of the hospital. That was convenient. It was the hospital where my husband, Jack, worked. I told the doctor my husband's name and pleaded, "I'm his wife. Please call my husband." However, the doctor replied, "There's no such person here by that name." No such person? What does that mean? I was struck by a headache and anxiety. I couldn't help but feel as if I had wandered into a different world. I'm Maggie. I'm 36 years old, and I work as a clerk at an advertising agency. I met my husband, Jack Davis, through an introduction from a salesperson at a printing company. Jack is a doctor, with a charmingly bright smile. His hobby is volunteering, and during our courtship, I joined him several times in activities like cleaning up the town. Jack would often say, "It feels so good to sweat for someone else's sake. Don't you think so, Maggie?" I would agree, saying, "Meeting you and learning the fulfillment of volunteering has been wonderful, Jack." Jack spends most of his earnings on donations and volunteering activities. Because of this, he frequently runs out of money and sometimes asks me for financial help. He clasps his hands together apologetically and pleads with me, saying, "I'm having a tough time again this month, so please." I have great respect for Jack's philanthropic spirit, so I gladly give him money and let him freely use our family credit card. I had no idea how foolish I was being. Around the time we had been married for a year, I started noticing concerning changes in Jack's behavior. He used to be a person who valued family and would come straight back after work, but, "Hey, you've been coming home drunk a lot lately. Is work going okay? Wouldn't it be terrible if there was an emergency surgery?" "Huh? Oh, it's fine. Don't worry. I'm drinking with those shift considerations in mind. I know nothing about a doctor's job. If Jack says so, I just assume it's true, and I never thought he would lie to me." One night, Jack didn't come home even after midnight. He didn't answer when I called. As I waited anxiously, the intercom rang. "Hey! I'm home!" Open the door! The door! Where and with whom have you been drinking so late? I could smell women's perfume on Jack's body. Was he drinking at a place with women? Or... My chest tightened. I realized I don't know anything about Jack. I've been complacent as his wife, trusting him completely and neglecting to check on him. If I don't get a grip, this could lead to something irreversible. That's how I felt. When I subtly asked if he might be having an affair, Jack shook his head and said, "No way." He leaned forward with disbelieving eyes and denied it. "That's impossible. I'm your partner. Believe me." There was a harshness in Jack's face that I'd never seen before. Of course, I want to believe him. I don't want to doubt him. But there have been too many suspicious things about Jack's recent behavior. He's become reckless with money, he's always irritated, and he seems to be avoiding me. One day, I was at a loss for words when I saw the statement for the credit card Jack had used. It was filled with the names of high-end bars and restaurants. There were also traces of him purchasing several expensive branded shoes and bags for women. Late that night, I confronted Jack with the statement as soon as he got home from work. "What is the meaning of this? What are you spending money on?" "Oh, that, my boss asked me to, and I couldn't refuse." He claimed that all the branded items were bought for his boss's daughter. The expenses at bars and restaurants were also apparently for socializing with his superiors. Political maneuvering is often portrayed in dramas set in university hospitals and such. Maybe Jack was caught up in those kinds of power struggles too. I decided to interpret it that way. That night, we had a long discussion. From now on, we would always inform each other when making big purchases. If he was going to be late due to socializing, he would contact me as soon as he knew. I didn't want to make Jack feel restricted, but this was for the sake of our harmonious marriage. He seemed to understand my feelings on the matter. One evening, on my way home, I was called out to by an unknown woman. Her demeanor was far from calm. Her eyes were very aggressive. She was a woman with long hair hanging in front of her, standing in a zombie-like posture. No matter how you looked at her, she wasn't normal. I instinctively braced myself. "Please stay away from my husband. You're really causing trouble for us." "Husband? I don't quite understand what you're saying." "Don't play dumb. You know I'm talking about Jack." There was also a boy who looked about 10 years old behind the woman. He was glaring up at me. I became incredibly frightened. Of all days, there was no one else around on the evening path home. I had to get away from here immediately. Otherwise, I was sure these people would try to harm me. That was the kind of vibe I got. "Jack is your husband? Isn't there some mistake?" Because Jack is my husband. I was about to explain that, when I heard a familiar voice from a distance. It was Jack. He came running in a hurry, but instead of coming to me, he rushed over to the woman with the child. Jack shook the woman's shoulders, seeming to scold her about something. Then the two of them meekly left. Once the mother and child were out of sight, Jack finally turned to me and smiled, asking, "Are you okay?" "They're patients at our hospital. Not only their bodies, but their minds are also ill." "Is that so?" "They were patients. So that's why she said those things about you." "Yeah. She was calling me her husband, right? Man, how troubling. A few months ago, I might have laughed along with him. But now, I couldn't bring myself to react that way at all. Patience? Really? Could Jack be lying to me? The distrust in me only kept growing. After that, the mother and child that Jack claimed were patients continued to stalk me. They usually appeared when I was on my way home after finishing work. As soon as I stepped outside after work, they would be following me before I knew it. And they would hide behind objects too. It was so creepy and unbearable. Every time I spotted the mother and child, I would call Jack and beg him to come help me immediately.
They're following me. Come right away. Please, help me.
It's okay. I've scolded them harshly, so they shouldn't do anything drastic. But what if they follow me all the way home? What should I do? They're patients. Please be careful. And don't call the police, okay? Perhaps because Jack contacted them, the mother and child disappeared at some point. I let out a sigh of relief. Really, what troublesome patients they are. That night, I asked Jack, who had come home, to make that woman stop stalking me.
I'm so scared I can't stand it. Please, deal with this properly. If it was that easy to deal with, I wouldn't be struggling. Try to understand. It takes time. Think about my feelings too. Isn't there any other way?
Anyway, I'll give them a stern warning. That's all I can do for now. Jack sighed, telling me to be patient. I wonder if he understands how scared I am. Ever since that woman started appearing, the gap between us as a couple has been growing. I couldn't help but feel that way. My anxiety and distrust keep building up. I've started to feel a strong sense of danger. But Jack won't take any effective measures. Maybe it's because of the doctor-patient relationship, but he seems to only care about her. Who on earth is that woman? I desperately wanted more information. But if I try to ask Jack, he'll probably refuse, saying he has a duty of confidentiality. After much deliberation, I decided to consult my younger brother Kenny, who had just become a lawyer this spring. When I met him at a cafe and explained the situation, Kenny furrowed his brows and showed me sympathy. That must have been a scary experience. A patient under Jack's care. She seems to be convinced that she's Jack's wife. So she thinks you're Jack's mistress and is telling you to break up with him? And she even has a child. That's right. The child is probably around 10 to 12 years old. I wonder what that child thinks of his mother's abnormal behavior. If I could get him on my side, maybe the situation would change. Kenny and I considered several countermeasures. But we couldn't find any effective means. The fact that she was Jack's patient and in a position to be respected limited our actions. I guess reporting it to the police is out of the question. It could end up causing trouble for Jack.
But I'm living in fear too, you know? Are you telling me to just stay quiet like this?
There's a limit to how much you can endure. In the end, I parted ways with Kenny without finding a good solution. That night, I belatedly reported to Jack that Kenny had become a lawyer. I had been so unsettled by that woman that I had completely forgotten to tell Jack.
I met Kenny today. I forgot to mention it, but Kenny became a lawyer.
What? Oh, is that so? Now that you mention it, he did say he wanted to become one. Jack seemed to remember Kenny's dream, even though they're usually not close. But at that moment, Jack's expression looked somewhat strained. He wasn't wholeheartedly happy for him. I couldn't help but feel that way. It was a Friday. I remember the sunset looking unusually red. I was hurrying towards my car in the parking lot as usual. Suddenly, I sensed someone's presence behind me. Someone was following me. It's that mother and child. I knew it instinctively. I mustered up my courage and turned around.
Enough already! What do you want with me?
I regretted it immediately. because the other party's demeanor was not normal. The woman who emerged from behind the pillar was holding a long rod. It was a metal rod, as if taken from some construction site. The child still hadn't come out from behind the pillar. He seemed to be frightened by his mother's abnormal behavior. My feet were frozen and I couldn't move. She raised the rod and attacked me.
If only you didn't exist.
I turned my back and ran away, but I don't remember much after that. All I remember is the strong impact on my head and the feeling of the hard ground. When I came to, I was lying on a hospital bed. An elderly doctor was peering into my face. Is the treatment already over? The doctor doesn't seem to be in a hurry. When I asked where I was, the doctor told me the name of the hospital. How convenient. It's the hospital where Jack works. I told the doctor his name. I'm his wife. Please call my husband. Dr. Davis from the surgical department. There's no such person here by that name. What? No such person? What does that mean? I was struck by a headache and anxiety. It feels like I've wandered into a different world. There's still no contact from Jack. No calls or emails. On a sudden impulse, I decided to contact Kenny and ask for his help. During my hospitalization and after my discharge, I refused to meet with Jack. Because Kenny investigated and told me facts that were reason enough. I had Kenny go and get a change of clothes for me, and after leaving the hospital, I went back to my parents' house. Jack called and emailed me many times, but I ignored them all. I can no longer trust a single word he says. I was furious. To break things off with that liar, I called him out to a cafe. Hey, Maggie. How are your injuries? You went through something terrible. Jack showed up with Kenny grabbing him by the scruff of his neck. He seems to have some idea of what he's about to go through. Jack's face was pale, and there was no trace of his usual lively demeanor. Ignoring the faintly smiling Jack, I thanked Kenny for going out of his way to bring him here.
Thanks, Kenny. Sorry for always asking you to do such troublesome things.
I'm fine. Be careful, you don't know what this guy might do. Hey. Kenny, cut it out. You're making me sound like some kind of criminal. But you are a criminal. Jack, you're a con artist. Not a doctor or anything. That's right, Jack was not a doctor. I had Kenny investigate thoroughly, so there's no mistake. He had a criminal record, and besides me, several other women were currently being deceived by him. That child turned out to be Jack's son after all. The worst kind of liar who ruined many people's lives. That was my husband, Jack.
Can you explain everything clearly, in your own words?
Here. How about somewhere else? Can't we do this at home?
It's better to have people around. I don't want you resorting to violence.
Even as I tell him to explain, I already know a lot about Jack. Kenny's investigation was thorough. He apparently enlisted the help of an acquaintance working at a detective agency. The reason I deliberately chose a cafe today was to make Jack talk. Of course, this exchange is being recorded. Eventually, I plan to turn Jack over to the police. Perhaps not knowing that Kenny had investigated him thoroughly, Jack started making excuses. There were a lot of misunderstandings, and Maggie ended up going through this. It's my fault. I admit it. Let me apologize. I'm really sorry.
Can you stop? There's no way I'll forgive you. I don't need your empty apologies. Spit out everything you've done up until now. We'll talk after that.
Shall I help you if it's hard to say? As I mentioned earlier, you're not a doctor.
The medical license you carry is a forgery. Isn't that right?
Jack bit his lip and hung his head. He had been faking his identity. He was pretending to be a doctor when he wasn't one. I can't forgive him when I think about how I was deceived all this time. I despise Jack for lying so nonchalantly, as if it was as natural as breathing.
Did you also lie to people other than me, claiming to be a doctor?
Yeah. To most people.
I'm appalled. Did you actually perform medical procedures while pretending to be a doctor?
Jack faltered. He seems to be on guard. He probably thinks he shouldn't say anything reckless. The law states that no one except doctors can perform medical procedures. If he had been pretending to be a doctor, he would be arrested immediately.
If you lied about being a doctor and performed medical procedures, it's a violation of the Medical Practitioners Act. It's punishable by up to 3 years in prison, a fine of up to $10,000, or both.
You're going to report me. That's what you're planning, right? Please, spare me. We're family, aren't we?
I'm ashamed of myself for becoming family with someone like you. Don't you think so too? You liar. You've been deceiving me all this time. Deceiving me while continuing to withdraw money.
In this 1 year of married life, Jack has depleted my savings by over $20,000. Jack's own wallet hasn't been hurt at all. Of course, since he's unemployed to begin with and has no savings. It was a lie that he worked as a doctor and devoted most of his monthly salary to volunteer activities. He never participated in charity work except when he was with me. Of course, he didn't make any donations either. He was a parasite who withdrew small amounts of money from several women, including me. That's the kind of man he was.
Just so you know, you have nowhere to run anymore, got it? You'll have to return all the money you stole from Maggie. And of course, you'll have to return it to the other people too.
All of it. But I don't know how much I used.
You don't know? That can't be true. I've been properly keeping track of when and how much money I withdraw from my account and for what purpose. I'm sure the other women have been keeping similar records too. It's precious money they earned by working hard. Unlike you who just spends it.
Jack shrank back as Kenny glared at him. He doesn't seem to have any intention of making excuses about the money. Confess all your crimes up until now, right here. When Kenny strongly pressed him, Jack finally started talking. However, the content was not what we had expected. I want you to listen calmly. It's true that I'm not a doctor. Not yet.
Not yet? Are you trying to say that you might become a doctor in the future?
I've been studying all this time with the aim of becoming a doctor. I'm really sorry for not being able to tell you until now. I apologize for that. I'm serious about this. I'm in the middle of aspiring to be a doctor.
If that's the case, why do you need to study in secret?
Jack faltered again. His expression is serious, and at first glance, it seems like he's trying to answer honestly. But Kenny and I already know. Jack is desperately trying to come up with excuses. Jack apologized, saying that he couldn't be honest with me until now because of his own weakness. I'm a pathetic man with high pride and no real ability. I thought if I lied about being a doctor, Maggie would notice me. I wanted to marry Maggie no matter what. So
you lied? To get me to notice you? You thought I was the kind of woman who chooses partners based on their titles? That's not what I meant. I mean, if there was a doctor and a man who wasn't, any woman would choose the doctor, right? That's how it is, isn't it? By the way, where were you studying? Can you tell me everything honestly?
At Kenny's request, Jack slowly began to explain. He says he often goes to cafes to study during the day. He also uses private libraries and applies for permission to use university libraries. Jack said that changing locations on different days increases his motivation. I let out a big sigh. I can't believe he can tell one lie after another like that. Jack doesn't seem to fully understand that we've already investigated everything. Hey, please, enough already. Stop lying.
What? I'm not lying. I really am. Really what? Studying? At cafes and libraries? But we never saw you doing that even once.
Kenny started laying out photos on the table. They were secretly taken photos of Jack's daily activities. Jack's face turned pale as soon as he saw the photos. He finally seemed to realize how cornered he was. I asked Kenny to investigate what kind of things you do on a daily basis. You didn't notice at all, did you?
I hired an acquaintance's detective agency to investigate. I thought it would be bad if you noticed the tail and became cautious. I was surprised when I saw the investigation results.
Investigation tailing me.
You haven't studied for even a single second. You're always either playing around, drinking, or meeting women. You're really good for nothing.
The photos that were taken told the truth. Jack gambling. Jack at a bar in the middle of the day. There were even scenes of him putting his arm around a young woman's shoulders, entering a hotel with a lewd grin on his face. I couldn't help but feel furious thinking that a lot of the money I earned was being used for these things.
It seems like you spend a lot of time gambling during the day. What? Oh, no, that's... Are you going to say it was to take a breather? Don't say such nonsense. If you were studying from textbooks for hours and playing around occasionally, I'd understand. But that isn't the case for you.
Jack, you're always just playing around. You don't even have any textbooks in the first place, do you? It's a lie that you're studying to become a doctor. Isn't that right? Jack's downcast eyes were darting back and forth. He's breathing heavily, thinking about how to get out of this. I glared at him, determined not to let him do that. After a while, Jack let out a big sigh and nodded deeply. I admit it. I've been running away all this time. I've challenged the national exam over and over again, and I've kept failing. I got into the habit of losing.
So you're insisting that you're aiming to be a doctor, no matter what? Of course. It's true. I'll definitely become a doctor and save a lot of patients. But for that, I need the support of my family.
Jack apologized to me profusely. His attitude was as if to say he was truly remorseful. He apologized to me tearfully, saying he was sorry for everything up until now.
Forgive me for being too weak to tell the truth. I'll have a change of heart from now on. I'll study more and more seriously and definitely become a doctor.
Jack. It's okay, I understand.
You understand.
Jack's expression disappeared when he looked at me. It was because he noticed the presence of a certain woman. She was standing next to our table, looking at Jack. I gestured to her and had her sit in the seat next to me.
Of course you know who this is, right? It's Nina. Jack, your
wife. That's what I thought. Until recently. Jack shuddered at Nina's anger-filled voice. There are other women besides me whose lives have been ruined by Jack's lies. Among them, I think it's safe to say that Nina was toyed with more than anyone else. After all, for years, she was made to believe that she was the legal wife.
What, Nina? Why are you here?
I received a call from Kenny over there and heard the detailed circumstances. I checked all the security cameras around where Maggie collapsed, with the owner's permission, tracked down Nina, and contacted her. Nina has already admitted her guilt. She apologized to me properly as well. She says she intends to turn herself in to the police. However, I don't intend to blame Nina more than necessary. Because while she is certainly the perpetrator, in a sense, she is also a victim.
Kenny showed me the photos of your and Maggie's wedding. Jack, you've been deceiving me all this time, haven't you? Nina, calm down. I didn't intend to deceive you. You didn't submit a marriage registration form with me. You said your parents wouldn't allow it, or that it wasn't the right time, and in the end, you never submitted it. But you were married to Maggie. I can't believe it.
Nina looks like she's about to explode. It's understandable. She even had a child with him. If you're betrayed after devoting yourself completely, the resentment runs that much deeper. I know all too well how terrifying she can be when she's desperate.
You told me that a certain woman had a hold over you and you couldn't go against her no matter what, so you couldn't provide financial support. You remember that, don't you? I won't let you say you forgot.
Oh, did I say something like that? My memory is a bit hazy. That's exactly why Nina attacked me in desperation. To free you from me. After hearing the details, I was so shocked. Of course, right? Normally, you wouldn't think that your husband was in a common-law marriage with another woman and even had a child with her. Jack, at a loss for words, was only trembling. He must be shocked that I've noticed everything. Nina believed Jack's lies and was compelled to take action. To protect the future of her child. If only I were gone, he could become a proper father. That's what Jack reportedly told Nina. If I were in the opposite position, financially on the edge, I might have followed the same path. I'm planning to turn myself in to the police after this. The child. I left them with my parents. No matter what the circumstances, the fact is that I hit Maggie, so I have to atone properly. Thank you, Nina. But don't blame yourself too much. This man is the one at fault.
Absolutely. There are other women you've deceived besides the two of them, right? Come clean about everything now.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I won't ever do it again. Excuses won't work anymore. There's no escape. He seems to have resigned himself to that. Jack admitted that he had deceived many women. He's reflecting deeply from the bottom of his heart. He won't repeat his mistakes. That's what he pleaded. But the idea of having such a superficial apology accepted is too naive. According to him, he's currently involved with 4 women, including Nina and myself. He's been getting by each month by receiving small amounts of money from each of them. It's terrible that he kept up such a lowest of the low lifestyle for years and even had a child. I don't want to be married to such a man any longer. I felt an incredibly strong disgust. Jack, divorce me. The divorce papers are here, so sign them right now.
What? Wait a minute. Please, let me think about it.
Think?
About what? It doesn't matter what you think. I want to divorce you as soon as possible. You should understand that you have no right to refuse, no matter what.
There are no options for a selfish, big liar. I thrust the divorce papers and a ballpoint pen at him, strongly urging him. Afterwards, Jack, succumbing to the pressure, finally gave up and signed. I'm finally free from this man. I breathed a sigh of relief. Jack's shoulders slumped, and he apologized again to Nina and me for everything up until now. Nina is a diligent woman. She really turned herself in. But I have no intention of holding her crime against her. In the end, the matter was settled by having her pay for my medical expenses, and such is a settlement. However, from my perspective, Jack has nothing to do with Nina. I won't be satisfied unless he takes full responsibility. Jack had been lying to me all along. I have no intention of forgiving him for that. I'll make sure he atones and receives the appropriate retribution. With Kenny's help, I filed a claim for damages against Jack. I have a clear grasp of the total amount of money I've given Jack so far. Of course, I didn't forget to add that to the compensation in the divorce trial. The unemployed Jack has no ability to repay. How can such a person pay a large sum of money all at once? Illegal lenders. There's no other way than to borrow from a company that lends to customers with issues. Jack started part-time jobs to repay the debt. He was even juggling 3 of them. I think he naturally intended to pay it back. But that was only at first. He, who had been living a life of leisure, couldn't quit his fun after all and fell behind on payments many times. As a result, he ended up being collected on by illegal lenders. As is well known from movies and dramas, debt collection by illegal lenders is extreme and malicious. Jack was persistently called in the morning, afternoon, and evening, and apparently they even contacted his part-time job. Of course, they also barged into the small apartment where he lived and pounded on the door. I heard from Jack himself that they camped out in front of his room, and he had a hard time getting out. He appeared in front of me after work and had the audacity to ask me to pay attention to him.
Please. I'm really in deep trouble now. My life is at stake. Those guys are incredibly persistent. They post my personal information online, put up flyers in the neighborhood. So what? It's your fault for not paying back your debt, isn't it? Stop playing the victim. And in the first place, why did you have to borrow money?
That's, of course I know. It's because I did terrible things to you and Nina.
If you know, then never show yourself in front of me again. I could contact the illegal lenders right now. Shall I?
Jack jumped up and ran away. That was the last time I saw him. I only know about what happened after through rumors. Bad rumors. They say he was caught by the illegal lenders and is being forced to work overseas. I don't know if it's true, but he deserves at least that much for what he's done. I hope he suffers for a long time and continues to regret what he's done up until now. Afterwards, I got a new boyfriend through Kenny's introduction. Apparently, he also has a past of being betrayed by a partner and carries painful memories. He says if I'm okay with it, he wants to date for a while and get married if possible. He really likes me, and I definitely want to respond to his feelings. Because of Jack, I even got injured on my head. I'm sure I'll never forget this grudge for the rest of my life. But thanks to that, it's also true that I was able to meet a wonderful new person. In life, misfortune and good fortune come alternately. From now on, I'm going to live with a broad perspective so as not to be swayed by the events in front of me or the circumstances around me. That's how I spend my days thinking now. Our son is going to live with you, Mom. Even if he's sick, being with your grandchild every day is a blessing, right? The voice of my son on the phone dripped with malice, as if mocking me. I hugged my grandson tightly, covering his ears so he wouldn't hear that voice. My grandson, who just turned 7, was recently taken to the hospital. There, he was diagnosed with a certain illness, and my son and his wife left him at my house. Coming home from work, I found my grandson sitting dejectedly at the entrance. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. He told me himself, I was abandoned by mom and dad because I'm sick. I wish they could understand how I felt. I immediately called my son. What followed was a brazen declaration of abandonment. My daughter-in-law, likely beside my son, let out a vulgar laugh, saying, "We don't want to catch his illness. Let the short-lived elderly take care of him." She hurled insults worse than my son's and cut off the call with a harsh laugh. The phone, abruptly disconnected, never connected again. Looking at my trembling grandson in my arms, I made up my mind. I will raise him. First of all, my name is Frida. I'm 57 and a company employee. I married my husband at 22 and gave birth to our son, Morty, the following year. My husband adored Morty, and the three of us lived happily together.
He's so adorable. I'm so happy such a cute child was born to us,
my husband would say, holding Morty and beaming with joy. But that happiness didn't last long. When Morty was 2, my husband suddenly fell ill and passed away. I was heartbroken, but I had no time to grieve. I had to raise Morty alone. From then on, I worked tirelessly, raising Morty as a single mother. I never remarried. Luckily, I had been a full-time employee since before marriage, so I managed to raise Morty without financial struggles. Now Morty is 34. He works as a company employee in a general business, but Morty has always been somewhat flighty and easily influenced. He got his current job because a college senior suggested it, and he just went along with it. When Morty was 26, he married a woman his age named Maya. Maya was very strong-willed, and I never had a good impression of her even during their dating days. For instance, Maya would frequently visit our house but never once said hello or goodbye. I gently brought this up to Maya at one point. "Maya, it's great you come to visit, but I'd appreciate it if you'd say hello when you arrive." Maya reacted defiantly, visibly annoyed. "What? You don't have the right to tell me what to do. I'm a guest here. I'm doing you a favor by visiting. It's really unpleasant to be told such arbitrary things." I was stunned by her brash response. Morty, on his part, would say things like, "Mom, don't be so stiff." I thought it was common sense to greet when visiting someone's home, but it seemed not to apply to Maya. Morty appeared completely under the thumb of the assertive Maya. After Maya left, I reiterated my point to Morty, but just let it go. He just brushed it off. Incidents like these often happened, so I didn't have a good impression of Maya. Of course, I repeatedly told Morty to be more responsible. The couple rented an apartment after their marriage and started living near our house. The following year, they had their first son, Darren. My first grandchild. Children grow up so fast, and in no time, Darren turned 7. One day, as I was returning from work and my house came into view, I noticed someone sitting at the entrance. Who could that be? As I got closer, I realized it was Darren. Having been busy with work recently and not seeing my son's family or Darren, I was both surprised and overjoyed to see him after so long.
Darren, it's been a while. What are you doing here?
When I called out to him, Darren slowly lifted his face to meet my eyes. Grandma. Seeing Darren's face after such a long time, I was lost for words. His face had white, patchy areas, and his eyes were swollen red as if he had been crying. I tried to remain as calm as possible and invited Darren inside. And? Darren, what happened? Can you tell Grandma about it? I gently asked him. He nodded slowly and began to speak in bits and pieces. Well, I got a skin disease. I forgot its name because it was complicated, but it's a rare disease. Seeing young Darren's lips quiver and his face turn pale, my heart ached. A rare disease. Is that really what you were told? Yes, Mom and Dad said that. Ever since I got this disease, they stopped looking at my face. And today, they brought me here to Grandma's house and told me to wait for you, and then they went away. Shocked by Darren's story, I hurriedly called Morty. To prevent Darren from hearing the conversation, I asked him to stay in the living room and drink juice while I moved to another room.
Morty, I heard from Darren. How could you leave him at our doorstep without telling me anything?
Mom, you're back.
Yeah, Darren has this rare disease called pityriasis simplex.
It's really troublesome. Pityriasis simplex. I remembered hearing that name before. I had seen a feature on it on TV once. Wasn't it just white spots? White spots are common in children and not a rare disease.
Is it really a rare disease?
The dermatologist said it's pityriasis simplex.
It's a complicated name, so it must be rare, right? So, since we could catch it too, Maya suggested you should raise him, and I agreed. So, Mom, please take care of Darren for us.
Thanks.
What? You call yourselves parents? That's so irresponsible.
I shouted in anger at Morty's outrageous statement. Then Maya took over the call, and her shrill voice echoed.
Morty and I are still young and have our lives ahead of us. It would be terrible to catch such a creepy skin disease. So let the short-lived elderly take care of him. Bye.
With that unilateral shout, the call was disconnected. Stunned, I quickly took out a book from the bookshelf that listed various diseases and their treatments and looked up pityriasis simplex. Thank goodness. It's just white spots. He'll be fine. The research confirmed that pityriasis simplex was not a rare disease and, with proper treatment, could be cured in most cases. I felt relieved and simultaneously furious at my selfish son and daughter-in-law. I realized they had abandoned Darren at our house, assuming it was a rare disease from its complicated name. How selfish of them. I will definitely raise Darren well. I muttered with determination and returned to the living room. I smiled at Darren, who looked anxious. Darren, don't worry. Your illness is curable. Let's go to the hospital together tomorrow.
Really?
Darren, thinking it was incurable, lit up. Yes, it's not a rare disease, so don't worry. And Darren, from today, you'll live with Grandma. It's okay. I'll make sure you're happy. Let's live together happily. Darren looked a bit bewildered, but then nodded. Thank you, Grandma. And smiled. Time passed, and 9 years went by. I turned 66, and Darren became 16. During these 9 years, I couldn't make any contact with my son and his wife. Darren, in his teenage years, didn't talk much lately but grew up kind, occasionally cooking meals. Now retired, I support Darren with my pension and retirement funds. Then one day, my son and his wife, who disappeared 9 years ago, suddenly appeared at our home. What do you want now, after all this time? I coldly confronted them at the entrance. How dare they show their faces after not contacting us for 9 years? Hey, we saw you on TV the other day. Surprised us. Darren is amazing. Earning so much money at his age, huh? Apparently, they had seen a recent TV interview, Teenage Genius Inventor. Maya, standing next to Morty, also chimed in with a sneer. Getting a patent and all, that's really amazing. You must be so rich now, huh? Indeed, Darren was skilled at inventing, and he had recently obtained a patent. It was clear from their attitude that Morty and Maya believed Darren was making money from his patent and had come here today with that in mind. They hadn't expressed any concern for Darren, they only talked about him becoming rich. They're still the worst couple. Then Darren appeared behind me. He must have heard our conversation. Hey Darren. We've come to take you back. A son is a son, even if he suffers from an illness. Let's live together again with your dad and mom. Morty's exaggerated behavior was almost laughable. To this, Darren responded coldly. Huh? Who the heck are you? Darren, now a high school student, was old enough to understand the situation. He realized from the conversation that his parents were after money, and felt no attachment to them, having been abandoned. Morty and Maya seemed taken aback by Darren's indifferent attitude, but quickly regained composure and started talking fluently. Darren is sick, so his life will be tough. That's why Maya and I will support him, Morty declared. What? After you abandoned me, you have the nerve to act all fatherly now? Don't pretend to be a dad. Darren, having listened to them for a while, clicked his tongue in disgust and scoffed. I was also astonished that they still mistakenly thought Darren had a rare disease. Darren's face had completely healed. Morty, Maya, you've been mistaken all along. Darren doesn't have a rare disease. Pityriasis simplex is just white spots, common in children. Darren completely recovered in about a year. Stunned by my explanation, Morty suddenly changed his attitude and shouted, "We've been tricked. Screw you. Why didn't you tell us something so important?" Maya followed suit. "We were kidnapped by an old woman. You've taken our child for 9 years. Give back our child, Frida, you old kidnapper," and cursed at me. Ignoring their rants, Darren quickly took out his mobile phone and called the police. The police are on their way. And just so you know, getting a patent doesn't mean you become rich instantly. You need companies to use the technology, and only then do you get patent fees. It's not some epic-making discovery, nor is it a widely used patent, so it's just a dream to be filthy rich. The money I've received so far has all gone to materials. So, I don't have any money. After Darren explained calmly, Morty and Maya turned red with anger, screaming, "What the hell? Then why did you call us here?" Seeing their reaction, Darren sighed. "I don't know. You came here on your own, so don't get angry at us. Just go home." Seeing Darren laugh, Morty shouted, "Don't you get smart with me." His fist was clenched, ready to lash out at Darren, so I instinctively jumped forward to intervene. Just as Morty was about to swing at me, a loud male voice rang out, "Stop it!" A police officer was outside the window. He had seen Morty about to hit Darren through the curtain and acted quickly. While his shout startled Morty, another officer quietly entered from the entrance, stepping between us and Morty. Morty waved his open hand, feigning innocence. He then sneered at Darren. "You might be an inventor or whatever, but don't get cocky. Live with that old woman for the rest of your life." With that parting shot, he left. The police asked if we were okay, and we said yes. After explaining the situation, we were advised not to let my son and his wife into our home again, and I nodded in agreement. The police reassured us they would help if needed, leaving me relieved. After the police left, I asked Darren, "Are you okay?" Concerned about his mental state. I knew he must be hurt, even if he acted tough, after being treated that way by his biological parents. However, Darren admitted, "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shocked. I knew my parents were the worst for abandoning me without understanding my illness. But I didn't expect them to be that stupid, thinking I'm rich just because of a patent. All those nice words, thinking I'd agree to live with them." He sighed deeply, clearly displeased, and ruffled his hair. Then he looked down at me, smiling. "But Grandma, why did you try to protect me when I was about to get hit? I'm 16 now, and I'm bigger than you. I don't need protection." He asked me as if he was dumbfounded, which left me dumbfounded. "What are you talking about? No matter how old they get, you want to protect your kids. Their size doesn't matter." Darren groaned softly, then turned away. "I'd hate it more if you got hurt," he said gruffly, heading to his room. It seemed he was worried about me. I felt happy, realizing how kind Darren had grown. After that, I quickly contacted a certain person. A few days later, I went to the house where my son and his wife currently lived, accompanied by a certain person. When I rang the doorbell, Morty opened the door lazily and was shocked to see me and the person beside me.
"Lean! Why?"
The person next to me was Lean, Morty's friend. Morty's voice startled Maya, who also came from the back.
"Lean!"
Her face turning pale. Ignoring me, the couple was visibly shaken by Lean's arrival. "Long time no see, Morty, Maya." Lean greeted them, and Morty, looking agitated.
"How did you find this place?"
he asked. I answered his question. "When you came to our house the other day, you mentioned to Darren that you now live in a single-family home in this town. I didn't miss that."
"But how did you find this specific house with just the town's name? We didn't give you any detailed address,"
Morty exclaimed in panic. "That's true, knowing just the town's name wouldn't be enough to find your address, so I hired a detective to focus on this town."
"A detective?"
"Yes, and it didn't take long for them to find you. Then, I contacted Lean and we decided to come see you together today."
"Using a detective is cheating. That's no different from stalking."
Lean glared at Morty.
"I've got nothing to say to fraudsters. Anyway, Morty, Maya, return the money I lent you."
Lean's stern voice filled the room, causing the couple to tremble. Lean, a friend of Morty's, had lent them money. I only found out about this after my son and his wife had disappeared for some time. Lean came to my house to consult about lending them money and not being able to contact them anymore. He came all the way to visit me, wondering if they might have returned to a parent's house due to financial struggles so bad that they had to run away to avoid paying him back, and asked me to let him know if I ever found out their whereabouts. You two told Lean that Darren had a rare disease and you were in a tight spot financially, and got $5,000 from him by playing on his sympathy." My words made my son and his wife look down, trembling.
"It wasn't just Lean, you did the same thing with others, borrowing money here and there. Then, when repayment became difficult, you abandoned Darren at our house and disappeared without paying back anyone, exploiting people's kindness for your own gain. You're the lowest of the low."
"No.
"But we really thought Darren had a rare disease." "Yes, we really did. That's why we borrowed the money."
Frustrated with their excuses, I shouted.
"What are you talking about? Even if you thought so, you never treated Darren's condition. You took him to a dermatologist once and then neglected him, not spending a dime on his treatment. So where's the money you borrowed from your friends? Do you have it with you if you didn't use it for treatment costs? Of course, you don't. You probably squandered it on yourselves. As parents and human beings, you're the absolute worst. Shame on you."
"Ugh." They fell silent. "The real reason you left Darren at my house wasn't because you were afraid of his disease spreading, it was to evade the debts you owed. Months before abandoning Darren, you frequently went on trips and started wearing only branded items, didn't you?"
"No, but it's true that we didn't want to be around Darren because his disease was creepy."
Even at this point, they still tried to justify. And with despicable excuses, too. Sighing deeply. "Darren is fortunate not to have grown up with parents like you. He might have ended up with a twisted personality because of you. I'm so glad he has grown into a kind and admirable young man," I said. My son and his wife made sullen faces, not seeming convinced. Lean said sternly to the two, "I have a good idea who else you've defrauded, so I'm planning to contact them and start a class action lawsuit. You better be prepared."
"A lawsuit? Wait a minute. Isn't that a bit too drastic?"
"Too drastic? Not at all. Unless you can repay right now all the money you borrowed from me and others, which I guess you've already spent, right?" Lean pressed. My son and his wife were speechless.
"I never imagined being betrayed by a longtime friend like you, Morty. I became distrustful of people for a while after you two disappeared. I will never forgive you,"
Lean said, glaring at them with hatred. I told my son and his wife, "Don't worry about Darren. He's a high school student now, capable of making his own decisions. Please don't contact him anymore." I was firm in cutting ties with them. Months later, despite being threatened, Morty and his wife still hadn't repaid the money. They were sued in a class action by the people they owed. Though each person was owed less than $10,000, the total was overwhelming for them. They ended up selling the house they had bought just a few years prior. But because they had a mortgage, most of the proceeds went to paying that off, and the little that was left went towards the lawsuit settlement. Even though it was their most valuable asset, I couldn't believe they had to sell their house. It turned out they sold the house intending to move back into mine. I learned this sometime after the lawsuit, when I got a phone call from an enraged Morty.
Mom! What the hell? Our house is gone. What's going on?
What do you mean?
As the for sale sign says, I sold the house and land.
It's quite obvious, isn't it? Indeed, I had decided to sell the house and land even before they faced the lawsuit. Real estate agents said that vacant houses are hard to sell, and that it was better to demolish and sell the land. Following their advice, I demolished the house and quickly sold the land due to its good location. The money went towards moving with Darren. Actually, Darren was attending a high school quite far away, and commuting from the old house was quite the journey. So we moved closer to his school for a shorter commute. When I explained this, Morty started shouting.
What? Where are you living now? We have nowhere to live since we sold our house. Tell me your address, we'll live with you.
There's no way I'll tell you.
One reason I sold the house and land was to cut ties with you. I won't tell you where we live, and I'm blocking your number, so don't contact us ever again. No. No way. That's too harsh.
Morty was stunned, and behind him, Maya's despairing scream could be heard.
The ones who are truly terrible are you too. You don't seem to be remorseful at all, but you should reflect on your actions and attitudes. The last thing I can say to you as a parent is to learn to introspect and repent. Goodbye,
I said and ended the call, setting it to block further communication. My disillusioned son and his wife managed to find an old apartment to live in, but they seemed to be leading a tough life. Afterwards, I consulted with the lawyer hired by Lean and reconsidered my relationship with Darren. Until now, I had raised him as a grandmother. But Morty and his wife's presence was negatively influencing Darren. So, I considered legally becoming his parent through adoption. If it were recognized, I wouldn't have to divide my estate equally between Darren and Morty when I pass away. It would prevent Morty from running off with everything. I decided to check with Darren.
Darren, I want to adopt you. Not just as a grandmother and grandson, but legally as mother and son. What do you think? I respect your feelings, of course.
After a moment of silence.
Yeah, I want to be your son officially.
Darren smiled shyly and said. With Darren's consent, I contacted the family court with the help of a lawyer. Given Morty's terrible behavior, the adoption was relatively easily approved. Likely influenced by Darren being 16 years old. Darren and I successfully completed the adoption process. It was a joyous moment for me, especially knowing that he chose me over his biological parents even when he is still in his adolescence. Darren, talented in inventing, is always trying new things, and I'm living a peaceful life, enjoying watching him grow. No employee by that name works here, I'm afraid. I realized my husband Cody left something behind when he went on a business trip, so I called his office and told his name. To my surprise, they said no such person worked there. What could this mean? Suspicious, I started rummaging through Cody's belongings in his room. Then, from his luggage, I found something shocking, something unbelievable. When I found this astonishing truth, I decided to revenge. My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. This year marks my 3rd year of marriage to Cody. Since I was the only daughter, Cody became an adopted son-in-law of the Thunderbolt family to carry on our name, and his last name became Thunderbolt too. He gladly accepted to take on my family's name. We had a blissful marriage, usually busy with our jobs, but we promised to have a baby someday. I could never have predicted our happy life would come to such a sudden end. It all started on the day Cody left for his business trip. While cleaning his room, I found a large envelope. It looked like important documents for his trip.
Oh no!
I tried calling Cody, but his cell phone was off and I couldn't reach him. Maybe he was on a plane or on Amtrak train, going through the tunnel. Thinking it urgent, I called his company next. Hello, this is Seven Forest Corporation.
I'm Cody Thunderbolt's wife. He forgot something important and I need to contact him right away.
Cody Thunderbolt. Please hold for a moment. The man on the phone, presumably Cody's colleague, sounded perplexed. Soon, the call was put on hold, and music began to play. After being on hold for about 3 minutes, the same man returned with an odd word. I'm sorry, but we don't have an employee named Cody Thunderbolt. Are you sure you have the right company?
What? But you are Seven Forest Corporation, right?
Yes, that's correct, but I was certain it was Cody's workplace. I double-checked the phone number, and it wasn't a common company name. Despite repeatedly confirming the company name and address, they kept insisting they had no employee by that name. All right, thank you. Sorry to bother you. I hung up the phone, utterly confused, but one thing was certain. Cody was lying about something. With a mix of confusion and a desire to find some clue, I searched his room again. And there, in his bag, I found an employee ID card for Seven Forest Corporation. It had his photo on it. He definitely worked there, no doubt about it. But the name written here. It said Cody Harris, a completely different last name. Confused and dizzy, I squatted down. I took a deep breath to calm my mind. Cody had a big secret. Convinced of this, I couldn't just sit still. I went straight to a private investigator to look into his background. Cody's business trip, if his words were right, was for a week. The investigator was skilled, and I got the report before Cody returned. But the content was shocking. To put it bluntly, Rachel Thunderbolt, you're single.
What? I don't understand what you mean.
Cody has another family.
Does that mean he's cheating on me?
Well, it's more like you're the other woman.
What?
According to the investigator, there was no marriage record between me and Cody. He had another family, with whom he was legally married, so they were his real wife and children. Was I not married? What does this mean? It was a shockingly unbelievable fact. After receiving the report from the investigator, I couldn't say anything and rode the bus home, absent-minded.
We'll need quite a bit of money for a wedding, huh? I can't afford it right now, but one day we'll definitely have one. I'll work harder so we can also go on a honeymoon.
3 years ago, Cody said that with a refreshing smile and promised. It's okay if we don't have a wedding. I'm happy as is. I smiled and said that. His parents had passed away, leaving him all alone, so we only reported our marriage to my parents. Since I was the only daughter, he took the initiative to take on the Thunderbolt name. Of course, my parents were delighted with this. We signed the marriage application, but around that time, I got busy at work and couldn't find time to go to the city office with him. Rachel, you're busy, right? I'll submit it when the time is right. So, I entrusted him with the application, assuming he had submitted it. But in reality, he never did, and so Cody and I were just strangers. We both had different jobs and social insurance, and we kept our finances separate. So, something that should have been apparent from tax documents or something went completely unnoticed. Cody must have known and done it on purpose. I believed we were married and lived as such. Thinking about it made me feel a deep anger rising within me. A week passed, and it was the day Cody returned home. I left work early to wait for him.
Cody, we need to talk.
As soon as he entered the living room with the carry-on bag he used for his trip, I talked to him. What? I have souvenirs, you know, he said nonchalantly. Seeing that just made me angrier.
Your real name is Cody Harris, isn't it? What?
I confronted Cody with the employee ID card I found in his room, and he looked shaken for a moment. Well, I just kept Harris as my name at work.
What are you talking about? When we met, you called yourself Cody Smith. Did I?
I don't remember. Cody tried to feign ignorance, but I presented him with the private investigator's report.
I went behind your back, sorry, but I had a private investigator look into you. You have another family, and I was just a fling, right?
He seemed taken aback by the evidence but quickly tried to regain composure with a smile.
It wasn't just a fling. I take everything seriously. Don't give me that. You clearly said you'd submit our marriage application. Did I say that? Then how come we're not married? Why is that?
Cody kept making irresponsible words, trying to dodge my questioning. His careless attitude only made me more stressed. You were the one who said, it's okay if we don't have a wedding. I'm happy as is.
That's different. This is a case of bigamy, a violation of the law.
That's fine. Since I never submitted the marriage application with you, it's not bigamy.
So my feelings don't matter at all.
Finally, my anger exploded. I slammed the table, causing a glass to topple and water to spill onto the floor. Ah, you're so noisy. I didn't think you were such a troublesome woman. Cody picked up his carry-on bag again and opened the living room door.
Then, I'm going home. Going home? Where to?
To my real home, obviously. It seems like a hassle to stay with you now. I won't come here for a while. Cool off in the meantime. Leaving these words as if I was the villain, Cody left the house.
Coward! Irresponsible man!
I threw a tissue box, but the front door closed mercilessly, and Cody never came back after that. I won't let this go. Didn't he realize in these 3 years that I'm not a woman who would just let things slide? I decided to make Cody pay for this. The next day, I called Misty Harris, Cody's legal wife, whose number was in the investigator's report. A woman answered, and I could hear a boy's voice in the background. Hello, are you Misty Harris, Cody's wife?
Yes, I am.
My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. I've been, well acquainted with Cody. Unsure how to start, my words trailed off, and Misty sounded very puzzled. I briefly explained the situation and arranged to meet her in person soon. At a coffee shop, as soon as we met, Misty glared at me with disdain.
You have the nerve to show up after messing with someone else's husband.
Wait, please. I'm a victim too. I showed her the investigator's report and explained everything in detail. I still can't believe I was the other woman.
Cody doing such a thing. Unforgivable.
Misty believed me after seeing the evidence and was visibly furious.
I understand the situation now. Not only did he play with your feelings, Rachel, but he's also been deceiving me all this time. So, I want to punish Cody, and I need your help.
All right, I'll help you. And so, we conspired together to plan our revenge on Cody. The day of reckoning came. On his day off, Cody was relaxing in front of the TV at Misty's house. Their elementary school-aged child was out with friends, so seizing the moment, I stormed into the house. Your other wife has graciously come to visit, Misty announced, leading me to the living room. Cody, who had been lounging, sprang up in shock at the sight of me.
Geez! Rachel!
Long time no see, Cody.
What? Why? How?
Cody, in confusion, pointed alternately between us.
What's this? When did you two meet?
Misty and I have become very close friends.
Huh.
At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Misty's parents, along with Cody's, arrived, looking furious. Cody, who was lounging around in sweatpants, straightened up quickly.
What? What brings everyone here together?
He was completely intimidated by their devilish expressions.
Rachel, did you set this up? I got Misty's help too. So, Cody, you have no allies here.
By yesterday, Misty had already told her parents that Cody was cheating. I had managed to get the contact details of Cody's parents, who were actually alive, and sent them a registered letter with the investigator's report and a summary of everything that had happened. And I called them here for Cody's punishment.
What are you doing? What's your aim with all this? First, you have something you need to do, right? You know what it is? You want money? No. You should start with an apology.
Pressed by my stern words, Cody looked pleadingly at Misty, who just stared back expressionlessly.
We'll demand compensation after you've done what you should. Right, Cody!
Misty and I towered over Cody, who had squatted down in exhaustion. Both Misty's and Cody's parents surrounded him with stern looks. Wait, if you two are getting along so well, there's no need to fight, right? Why not keep things as they are, maintain both families? Even in this situation, Cody tried to escape responsibility. He was just alpha an irresponsible person. I like both of you, I wanted to maintain good relationships, something like that. His shameless attitude was almost refreshing in its thoroughness. But both sets of parents berated him fiercely.
Are you joking? Don't you feel sorry for Misty and Rachel?
Shouts and tearful voices filled the air, and Cody shrank back, letting out a pathetic whimper. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. I understand exactly what you want. You do? So we can keep things this way, right?
No way! I'm utterly disappointed. I'm breaking up with you. And I'll be expecting compensation, so make sure you're prepared.
What? No. As I declared my decision to part ways, Misty followed suit.
I'm divorcing you too. Expect to pay compensation and child support. I don't ever want to see your face again. Get out.
Cody looked up at me, his eyes tearing, and tried to plead. Before I say, don't think of coming back to my place. I won't let you in.
I'll apologize properly. Let's submit our marriage application this time, right? Let's get married. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see you again. Goodbye.
Cody was disowned by his parents then and there, losing his last refuge. He was ousted from Misty's house by everyone present and stood dazed outside the gate. That was the anticlimactic end of our relationship. Now for the epilogue. Cody, having to pay us compensation and losing everything, stayed at cheap hotels and internet cafes. But after my call to his company about his business trip raised suspicion, his boss confronted him, and his double life was exposed. The whole company found out through the colleague who took the call, so Cody quit his job, fleeing in shame. True to his irresponsible nature, he ran away just because he felt uncomfortable, despite having no money. Eventually, Cody ran out of money and became homeless, as I heard. As for me, I ended my relationship with Cody, but the emotional scars of spending 3 years as the other woman didn't heal easily. I buried myself in work to forget, leading to a life consumed by my job. A male colleague, concerned about me, asked, "Is something wrong?" and we started going out for drinks together. While venting over drinks, I found myself crying, but he just silently supported me. Having lost trust in people, I began to feel that maybe I could trust this man, and we started dating. I'm experiencing a modest happiness now. Someday, I'm sure I'll find true happiness. I will make you happy for the rest of your life. Will you marry me? Of course I will. It was 5 years ago when my husband Trent proposed to me. We were college classmates, joined in the same student club and felt a great compatibility with each other. Naturally, we started dating and then got married. My name is Yolanda. 5 years have passed since our marriage, and I am now 33 years old. I'm still living the married life with Trent, but you've been slacking off lately, haven't you? What? What are you talking about all of a sudden? What is this I've found? Trent, who had just changed clothes in the closet after coming back home, confronted me with a receipt he found in the trash can of the room. It was a receipt from the lunch I had outside today. I don't understand what you mean. Whose money do you think you're spending on these lunches?
I'm having trouble here. You going out for these expensive lunches every time, especially when you're not working. Don't live luxuriously on my dime.
The happy atmosphere of our newlywed days had faded over the 5 years. Trent started acting like a bossy husband about a year ago. Suddenly, he completely stopped helping around the house.
It's weird for me to be doing housework. Housework is a woman's job. Especially since you're a housewife, I shouldn't be helping you.
With a mean smirk, Trent started making snide remarks. Although I was puzzled at first, I got used to his attitude within half a year. However, he wouldn't give me any answers when I asked why he changed. Yet without any clear reason, Trent just kept on bossing around every day.
But look at the cost of that lunch. It's pretty cheap, right? It's not even $15 per person. I don't think it's expensive enough to be angry about, and it's not like I go every day. Is it bad even once a month?
What? Just because it's infrequent, you think that makes it okay? Are you kidding me? Whose money do you think this is?
But it's not your money. It's my money. So if I say it's a waste, then it's a waste. If you're upset about it, do something about it yourself.
Don't be unreasonable. Besides, you were the one who said I shouldn't work. Isn't that a bit much to say? I kept working even after we got married. But in the second year of our marriage, Trent got transferred to a different department and started working long hours. That's when he asked me to quit my job. He said he wanted me to be at home when he was tired and coming home from work. And so, to fulfill that wish, I quit the job I loved.
Women working outside the home never leads to anything good. Quit it, quit it. And if you did work, could you manage household chores too?
Impossible, right?
It's clear you wouldn't be able to handle it all perfectly.
But I don't think it's right to complain like that. However, I had already reached my limit with Trent's attitude. I wondered why he needed to say that far. Without any clear reason or cause. And no answers even when I asked him directly. I was thinking that if this continued for life, maintaining our marriage would be difficult.
With that way of speaking and your ridiculous attitude, it's really unbelievable. If that's the case, I won't do the housework and will go out instead. I'll take care of my own chores, but you'll have to do your own, Trent.
What? Why the hell?
Isn't it obvious? There's no way I'll do this being blamed like that. I don't know where you got these ideas, but the days of housework is women's work have already gone. If you're going to keep complaining, then I have my own plans.
I began to calmly clear up the dishes in the sink. Usually, when I speak up like this, Trent loses his words and starts mumbling, "No, I didn't mean, But even paying attention to that is tiresome. Ending a marriage isn't something that can be done easily. That's why a part of me still wants to believe that one day things will change. Tossed around by this difficult issue, I kept wondering whether I should cut ties with Trent. Then one day, out of the blue, Trent sent me a message. "Starting next month, I'll take charge of your wallet." I had no idea what he was talking about, but that night, when Trent came home, he started to explain.
"Clearly, I can't entrust you with our finances. Starting next month, I'll be managing the money."
What? Why all of a sudden?
Did something happen?
Let's be honest, you've been really extravagant, haven't you?
To be frank, I have no idea about the amount you're spending. So, I'll take control of the finances. That way, we won't waste unnecessary money, right?
I was bewildered, wondering what he was suddenly talking about. I thought maybe the issue with the lunch before was really bothering him.
Look, about that lunch the other day? I've said it many times, but I don't go that often, you know? I can't trust you.
What?
So, what would make you satisfied? I'll be satisfied if I manage it for the time being.
Huh?
So, you just want to manage it yourself and you're making up excuses?
No.
That's not it. I just want to keep track of it.
Got any complaints?
It's strange. Why should you manage the money I earn by working? I should be the one managing it.
Whenever Trent lies or makes a desperate excuse, he always shows a look of annoyance. And right now, he's making those excuses right in front of me. There must be some other reason.
Hey, are you hiding something?
What?
I'm not hiding anything. Well, even if you say it's not good, starting next month I'll be the one managing. Got it? This is a done deal. It's fine to say that, but can you manage it? Trent, you're not exactly frugal. Are you mocking me? I can manage my own salary. Well, your spending money will be just $100 though.
Trent, looking very pleased with himself, decides on the amount of money I can freely use and laughs heartily. In the first place, how does he expect me to manage with just $100? He clearly has no understanding of our household finances. And what about the living expenses? At this point, I felt it was best to keep my cool.
Oh, so you got $300 and you're calling me stingy? Don't compare me to you. I'm the one who earned that money, so it's only natural. Besides, you can hardly do anything with just $300. It was inconvenient for me. Don't say you decided to take control just for that reason. That's none of your business. You've been leeching off me all this time. Now, it's time to pay for being such a parasitic woman.
Parasitic, huh?
I never thought I'd be called bad like this. I don't care. Listen, I'm managing the finances from next month. It's decided. Don't complain every time, got it?
Trent fled to the bathroom and took a shower. I was far from convinced. Because I felt that Trent was hiding something more. The next day, I tried to uncover the truth. But of course, there was no obvious evidence lying around the house.
It's strange. I felt like he was hinting he needed money, but,
Suddenly, I remembered our savings account. Actually, we had set up this account after getting married. It was intended for emergency expenses. I noticed that the drawer containing the banking card had been slightly opened.
I haven't opened it recently, surely not.
Tentatively, I checked the bank balance online. And there it was, the balance was only $7.
What? What is this?
I was speechless to see that, which should have been well over several $1 million, was almost nothing. That night, I confronted Trent, but the answer I got was unexpected.
What's wrong with me using it? I earned the money. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce, you know?
What do you mean?
This was the account we were saving for emergencies. I can't believe you used it without asking. What did you spend it on?
Trent was unapologetic. Moreover, he boldly claimed it was his money. However, the withdrawn amount was about $6 million. Obviously something was wrong. I was thinking of divorce if he evaded the reasons, but it ended up with him implying divorce first. However, Trent, with a composed attitude, blurted out something outrageous.
Well, it was for my girlfriend. What? I spent it on my girlfriend. Got a problem?
Trent casually admitted to having an affair. With a creepy smile on his face. I was beyond angry and managed to deal with the situation calmly.
She's younger and cuter than you. So I don't mind getting a divorce at all. Oh, really? Well, since you're so openly talking about your affair in front of me, you must be prepared, right?
Then Trent burst out laughing.
Ah ha ha ha. Hilarious. You know, in this world, evidence is everything. Proof? Preparedness? Do you even have that? Sure, I just admitted to having a girlfriend, but do you have any proof of that?
Trent revealed his infidelity, confident that I had no proof. Essentially, without evidence, I couldn't prove his adultery. This meant that no matter what was said, he could deny everything in a crunch since there was no proof.
In the world, you often hear about housewives realizing their husband's infidelity, then getting compensation in divorce court. But reality isn't so sweet. You won't be able to do anything to me and will be divorced. What's that supposed to mean? See? You're starting to understand your position, right? You don't want to be divorced, do you?
So just shut up and follow what I say. The reason doesn't matter. Trent smirked triumphantly at me. I despised Trent from the bottom of my heart, but I knew I had to handle this calmly. Okay, so I'll be managing the finances from next month. Oh, and I have plans to go on a trip with my friends next weekend. I won't tell you where to avoid being caught. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what you can do with just $100 a month. Trent then went into the bedroom. After a while, I could hear him talking to someone in the room. It must have been his mistress. On that day, I realized I was betrayed by my husband and my life was being controlled. Or so it seemed. A month later, Trent returned from his trip with his friends, rolling his suitcase.
I'm back. Had a blast. Don't expect any souvenirs from me, obviously. Hey, what's this?
Trent probably wanted to flaunt his dominance as he entered the house, with his snide remarks echoing down the hallway. But without paying attention to his voice, I was sitting on the living room sofa, legs crossed. And there, spread out on the floor around me, were all the pieces of evidence of Trent's infidelity, waiting for his return. Photos, investigation reports, WhatsApp conversations, and more. I had laid out all the evidence I had meticulously collected.
Hey, what's this?
I thought I'd show you my face one last time before leaving. How about it? This is all the evidence I've been gathering for so long. I smiled at Trent, who turned pale. He seemed frightened by my gaze. All his earlier bravado had vanished. Proof.
What? How did you?
You thought you could boldly cheat because there was no proof, but you were so wrong. I've been collecting this evidence for a year, waiting for this day.
A year ago,
I had accidentally seen a ridiculous message of "I love you" on your mobile phone a year ago, which tipped me off about the affair. Since then, I had been discreetly gathering evidence, entrusting it to professionals.
Wait. How did you collect all this evidence? You'd need money to hire a professional. You didn't use my money, did you?
I think it's questionable that you keep referring to it as your money, but right after I discovered your affair, I started a data entry job to have my own disposable income.
What?
I did all this to save up for investigation costs and gather evidence. But the side job ended up being more successful than I thought. Within half a year, I was making as much as an average salaried worker. That's why I could afford to go out for lunch without worry and even hire a professional.
Are you serious?
I plan to keep doing it. So let's get a divorce. I don't need you anymore. I stood up from the sofa and was about to leave the room, when Trent grabbed my arm.
Wait. I don't want a divorce.
What? I quickly shook off his grip and glared at him. Who said it was okay to divorce? Since I have your permission, I'll proceed with the discussion, all right?
Wait. I wasn't serious. I just wanted to scare you a bit.
So? I sighed deeply. Just thinking that I married this man made me feel disgusted.
Sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me.
No. I didn't want to hear any more excuses, or see his face or hear his voice. So I just added a single word and left the house. Of course, I had copies of all the evidence scattered on the floor. I had the originals and all the photos. So I deliberately left them scattered as a final parting gift.
Don't go, please. I'm begging you.
I ignored his familiar voice behind me, closed the front door, and went back to my parents' house. 3 days later, Trent, his mistress Yvonne, me and my lawyer arranged to meet. The topics were only compensation in the divorce case and repayment of the squandered savings. I demanded $3 million from Trent and $1.5 million from Yvonne.
Don't joke with me. I will absolutely not pay $1.5 million.
Yvonne came at me, yelling loudly. Trent tried desperately to stop her, but I was not idle enough to deal with these foolish people. Or rather, Trent had no taste in women. A junior from the same company, just because she's fairly good-looking, he got involved with such a woman.
All right, if that's the case, we won't settle out of court. Let's go to trial then. What? A trial? Why?
I became weary of even explaining inside, ready to leave the place. Why do I have to confront such idiocy? And then, I just let out what I was thinking, both in my expression and attitude. Ugh. Ridiculous.
You knew he was married when you got involved with him, right? Don't you realize that's wrong?
How old are you?
You're wrecking someone's family. You should be grateful we're even considering a financial settlement. It'd be wise for you to recognize that you're getting off easy. Use whatever brains you have left. What? I can't stand to hear your excuses. Okay, so no settlement outside of court. I really don't want this to drag out, but it seems I have no choice. We'll settle this in court then. And of course, we'll have to inform your company about the lawsuit caused by your affair, right? Make sure you tell them. Goodbye, you won't get another chance. Wait a moment. Yolanda. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't go to court.
I let out everything I wanted to say all at once. And then, I resolved to take it to court. Not agreeing to an out-of-court settlement and going to trial is common sense in society. The other party is senseless, but maybe they'll understand how terrible their actions were if they suffer the consequences. I thought they deserved to go through that pain. Afterward, Trent tried to contact me numerous times, but I ignored all of it. I shut out all communication and consulted with my lawyer about the divorce trial. The trial began, and both sides had lawyers, but then they sought a settlement. However, I refused it. I already gave you a chance, I said. And then, I won the case. Even though the compensation was reduced, I was really glad to settle everything decisively in court. Following the trial, both of them took voluntary retirement from the company. They felt uncomfortable being whispered the foolish who refused settlement and lost the case. Now, they have returned to their parents' homes, but things didn't work out, and it seems they were driven out of their hometowns. Nobody knows where they are or what they're doing now. And since they haven't tried to contact me, I've been living peacefully. To be safe, I'm considering the idea of moving abroad, for I bit scare of time. I'm thinking it would be nice to live leisurely in a country where the cost of living is fairly reasonable.
Hey, mister. I'm the daughter of this company's owner, all right? My dad's the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees.
Surprised by both her vulgarity and her true identity, my dad paused with a shocked expression, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol wore a smug look, as if she had just made a grand statement. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. Just then, Dad spoke in a low voice.
So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure.
He muttered this almost to himself.
What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontractor do you work for? I'll tell Dad about you. It might just be your fault if the company goes under.
Carol retorted. Dad, looking slightly puzzled, thought for a moment before breaking into a smile. Then, let's go say hello to the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. Everyone except Dad looked shocked, but he walked ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we hurried after him. My name is Lenore. I'm a hardworking 28-year-old. The company I work for is quite large, and I work tirelessly every day. My dad, concerned about me, contacts me once a week, but I always reply with, "Don't worry." Trying to reassure him, almost forcibly. His concern is probably because he wants to recruit me to his company. 7 years ago, when I was still a college student, I was busy with job hunting every day to secure a job offer. Dad, who runs his own company, once invited me to join his company, saying, "Why bother with job hunting? You can just come work for my company." It's not that I didn't want to go to his company, but I didn't want to rely on such connections. I wanted to succeed on my own merit. And I wanted to work alongside him, as an equal, once I was fully competent at my job. I explained this and persuaded him. Reluctantly, he agreed, and I joined my current company. It's been 6 years since I started working here. Now, I have more responsibilities, and I even have subordinates. And it's our busy season. It's not uncommon for our department heads to be absent from the office for an entire day during this time, and sometimes I can't even sit at my desk for more than 30 minutes. We're that busy. I don't have the luxury of constantly worrying about Dad's feelings. Today, I've been bustling around the office since morning. Even amidst the rush, a shrill voice caught my ear as I passed by a meeting room, prompting me to stop. The door was slightly ajar, and peering inside, I saw a woman with a tray bowing her head before another woman who sat arrogantly, berating her.
How many times do I have to tell you? I don't like coffee, I want Coke.
It seemed the employee had brought the wrong beverage. The angry woman looked younger than me, but whose guest was she? A frequent complainer, perhaps? It's disgraceful to fuss over complimentary beverages. I wondered what her parents would think. Just as I was about to open the door and intervene. Ah, there she goes again. I heard a voice behind me. Turning around, I saw my colleague Sissy peeking into the room.
You scared me. Don't just start talking out of nowhere.
I chided her in a whisper, careful not to be overheard.
Sorry. But it's unexpected to see you peeking, Lenore,
she said with a mischievous grin. Sissy is only a year younger than me, even though she's my subordinate. We get along well and often go out for drinks. Professionally, she's my subordinate, but in our private lives, we're like friends.
I wasn't peeking. By the way, Sissy, do you know who that woman is?
I asked.
Oh, she's quite notorious around here,
Sissy replied with a slight smirk.
That's Carol, the boss's only daughter. His daughter? But why is she here? I inquired, puzzled. She occasionally comes to play around like this, throwing her weight around with the staff. No one dares to contradict her because she's the boss's daughter.
As Sissy explained, Carol continued to berate the employee.
Go buy me a Coke. What's your name? I'll tell Dad,
she shouted. I want to help that employee, my colleague, but I hesitated.
Let's get back to work for now, Lenore,
Sissy suggested. Poor thing, we don't keep Coke for guests. Sissy gently closed the meeting room door, holding the handle that I was gripping.
She enjoys bossing the staff around like this. She never actually reports anyone.
Last week, it was ginger ale. You have work to do, Lenore.
She's not worth your time.
Her words reminded me of the tasks I had to complete.
Sissy, are you free now? Want to come to the warehouse with me? Sure. I was actually looking for you. I have some business there too.
We left the meeting room, the shouts still echoing, with heavy hearts.
Why does Carol come here to play? She should be having fun with friends. She looks college-aged.
I pondered aloud while checking inventory in the warehouse.
Apparently, she's joining the company next year. She's been visiting frequently for that. You'd think she'd rather be with friends, but she doesn't seem to have many,
Sissy commented.
True.
I mused, feeling uneasy about Carol. Shouldn't she value the employees who support her family's business? Especially since they'll be her coworkers and supervisors next year? It's not right to treat them as mere playthings. Does she not realize she's embarrassing her parents? As I pondered these things, the pressure of my pen on the inventory notes inadvertently grew stronger. Noticing this, Sissy glanced at my notes. I get why you're angry, Lenore. She's exactly the type of person you dislike the most, she said with a wry smile. That's true, but what really irks me is the boss and the executives who say nothing. They should reprimand her for such behavior.
Apparently, she's an overindulged child, born late in her father's life,
Sissy explained with a gentle smile, easing me back into work mode. Thanks to her, I managed to finish the warehouse work surprisingly quickly. Exhausted from the day, I was heading home when my mobile phone rang. It was a message from Dad. Lenore, I'm coming to your company tomorrow for a business deal. If you're free, I'd like to see you. I was surprised. Dad was visiting my office? The company I work for is in the same industry as his company, and I knew they were connected, but it was the first time he had shown his face at my company in the 6 years I've been working there. I hoped to see him, but it really depended on timing, so I just replied, "If I'm free, I'll come and see you. Let me know." And then closed the message. The next day, my office was busy, but things started to calm down by lunchtime. While eating, I received a message from Dad. "I'll be at your company soon." I checked the time and decided to wait for him outside. As I got up, Sissy, sitting next to me, asked,
"Where are you rushing off to, Lenore? It's still lunch break."
"Oh, my dad is visiting the office today. I thought I'd go say hi since it's been a while."
"What? Can I come too, just to greet him?"
she asked excitedly. "Sure, let's go together," I agreed. Sissy followed me, checking her reflection in the window and fixing her hair. I was pleased to have such an eager subordinate. While Sissy and I waited for my dad at the entrance.
"Is that him?"
She suddenly pointed to a taxi. I shook my head. Steve would have driven his own car rather than take a taxi. As we looked in the opposite direction, a shrill voice called out,
"Nice of you to meet me here."
I pretended not to hear, but Sissy made a disgusted face as if to say this is the worst.
"Hey, you over there, where are you looking? I'm right here."
I turned around, frustrated. And there was Carol. She was dressed inappropriately for the office, in a flouncy miniskirt and casual t-shirt, clacking her heels as she walked towards us.
"Excuse me, but you're mistaken. We're waiting for someone else here," I said, looking away again.
In an ear-piercing tone, Carol shouted,
"What's with that attitude? Aren't you an employee here? Apologize right now."
Sissy looked at me with a panicked expression. "Yes, I'm an employee."
"But why should I apologize?"
I responded calmly.
"What?"
Carol seemed even more incensed by this.
"You, a lowly employee, think you can talk to me like that? Really, old lady?"
"Well, a company needs its lowly employees, doesn't it? And for your information, I'm only 28, not an old lady." Carol burst into laughter at my reply.
28? You look much older. Is it hard being poor? I pity you,"
she said, pointing at me mockingly. I was furious, but I couldn't do much since she was the boss's daughter. I had to stand there, seething in silence, as she laughed. Then,
"Hey, Lenore! Long time no see."
I heard a voice from afar. Approaching us was Dad, a slightly overweight, ordinary-looking man in a suit, waving his hand.
"Who's that weird guy? Hilarious,"
Carol said, looking at him and laughing. That was the last straw for me.
"Excuse me, that's rude."
I raised my voice.
"What? Who are you yelling at?"
Carol yelled back. "What's going on? Are you all friends?" Unaware of the situation, Dad smiled at me kindly.
"What? As if I would be friends with these people."
Carol snapped at him, switching her target from me to him. Dad's expression changed immediately.
"How rude to say these people when you are colleagues who work together."
He was right, but Carol wasn't convinced.
"Listen, old man. I'm the daughter of this company's owner. My dad is the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees."
Dad looked shocked by Carol's rudeness and her identity, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol looked smug, as if she had just triumphed. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. But at that moment, Dad spoke in a low voice. So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure. He muttered this to himself.
What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontracting company are you from? I'll tell my dad about you. You might just ruin the company.
Carol spat out. Dad, looking puzzled, thought for a moment before smiling. Well then, let's go greet the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. The only one unfazed by the situation was Dad, who had already started walking ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we quickly followed him. We reached the boss's office, and Dad entered first. Sissy and I followed, tense. Carol, pushing past us, rushed to her father.
Dad! This man,
She began to tattle immediately. Before Carol could finish, her father spoke loudly.
This man? Who are you talking to?
I'm sorry, Steve.
My daughter lacks manners.
He shot Carol a sharp look to silence her, then turned to us with a smile.
Ah, it's your daughter with you today?
Did you know about me? I asked, surprised. Dad sat down on a sofa.
Wait, Dad.
Carol protested. Dad gave me a kind look, then turned his sharp gaze to the boss.
Earlier, your daughter called my daughter and her colleague lowly, poor employees.
What's this about? The boss's face tightened.
Well, they deserved it. They were rude to me, just low-end employees.
Carol continued in her shrill voice.
What?
The boss turned pale and shouted angrily at Carol.
What are you saying? This lady is the daughter of a valued client, and this man is her father and the current boss. Eh?
Carol's face turned pale, realizing the gravity of her actions. To think such a large company still treats its employees as poor. You've become quite the boss, haven't you? If your employees are poor, shouldn't the company be ashamed? The boss was sweating profusely. I can't leave my daughter in such a place. She'll resign today. When the boss heard that, he immediately apologized to my dad and said,
I'm terribly sorry. I've heard your daughter is very skilled. Please, not resignation. And you, apologize to him.
Wait, Dad. What's going on? I whispered to him.
I had let the boss know that you were employed here, to look out for you. As I knew that you don't like the preferential treatment, I told him just to keep an eye out.
Ignoring the boss and his daughter, Steve explained kindly.
But I never thought this company would treat its employees like slaves. Lenore, you can quit now. You've done well here for 6 years. Come work for me.
That's sudden. I can't just leave in the middle of the busy season. I protested. Dad seemed a bit exasperated by my response, but he eventually agreed. All right, if you insist. After this busy season, come work for my company. And you, it must be uncomfortable staying here after this. What do you say? The industry is the same. He kindly offered this to Sissy.
Yes, absolutely.
Sissy replied immediately. Wait, Sissy. I haven't decided yet. I protested. Sissy looked at me quizzically. Why not? Your dad's company is one of the elite in the country, and you're his daughter. Why wouldn't you go? Dad nodded in agreement with Sissy's words.
I don't want to join his company just because of connections. I know Dad's company is big, but I didn't want to take the easy way.
I explained. Sissy smiled happily. That's so like you, Lenore. And she continued.
Lenore's father, I'm Sissy. I really appreciate that I can work with her. She is an outstanding boss.
As she praised me, Dad smiled and sobbed along. I felt embarrassed and urged Dad to continue.
Dad, the boss is still.
Ah, right, forgot about that. Sorry, Sissy, we'll talk later.
Yes.
Sissy cheerfully replied.
Now, boss, no need to apologize anymore. Let's end our business dealings here.
As my dad finally addressed to him, he was surprised and looked up at Dad.
That would be a great loss for us. I'm truly sorry. No, it's fine. This isn't because of the disrespectful behavior towards them. Then why?
He asked.
Please guide me. I'll improve anything. I'll definitely make improvements.
The company would suffer a huge blow if they lost their dealings with Dad. That's why the boss kept apologizing repeatedly. Improvement is impossible. Once trust is lost, it can't be regained. You say employees are your priority, yet your daughter treats them like slaves. Did you think I wouldn't hear about it?
I'm not sure.
Even from the side, I can see Carol turned pale. I could demote you from the boss, but should I? Dad asked.
Please, forgive me.
The boss pleaded.
Hey, Dad. Just because you're a valued client, you can't really do that, can you?
I asked.
I can.
Dad replied with a smile, indicating he really had the power. I don't inquire deeply into the relationship between the boss and Dad, but Dad might be more powerful in this industry than I thought. With this realization, the both attitudes of my dad and the boss make sense.
I won't go that far since I'm not a child, but I will end our contract. Thank you for your business.
With that, he stood up, straightening his suit.
Please, I'm begging you. Just for this term, please reconsider. How about a promotion for your daughter? No, a raise. She can even become an executive right now. Dad! But you said I would start from manager because of how it looks to others. An immediate promotion to executive is impossible.
At that moment, my dad's look at the two changed to one of disdain. And the boss's pleading eyes were fixed squarely on Carol. Despite this, Carol still seemed dissatisfied with the difference between what her father had said about my position and her own treatment. I almost felt sorry for the boss with such an oblivious daughter. But I had reached my limit and couldn't hold back anymore.
You plan to put a woman who called us lowly, poor employees, and was rude to Dad in a position of authority?
I blurted out.
Well, my daughter doesn't understand because she hasn't experienced the real world yet. She'll learn to respect others through the hardships of society.
Respecting others has nothing to do with social experience. I interjected, louder than I intended. Carol looked up, startled, and I addressed her.
A company cannot function without its employees. Even someone who has never been an executive, like me, understands this. But you don't. Why? How would I know that?
Carol seemed genuinely clueless.
Do you think being a daughter of privilege puts you above others? Of course. I'm from a different upbringing. It's not my decision, it's God's.
To Carol's nonsensical reply, I forced a smile.
Then, as the daughter of this company's boss, I'm higher than you, right? You'll listen to me?
My smile was apparently so frightening that Sissy later told me it scared Carol, whose composure vanished.
Fine, what do you want? This company is not your playground. If you want to play, go find your college friends.
Carol hung her head in shame, her face flushed. Sissy quietly applauded me.
Well said. That's my daughter.
Dad laughed heartily. After that, Sissy and I spent a hectic month at work. But the second half of the busy season was unexpectedly calm. Each time our supervisors and colleagues looked puzzled, Sissy and I exchanged knowing smiles. A month later, Sissy and I resigned and joined my dad's company. Our previous company began to decline drastically. Rumors quickly spread that the abrupt termination of the contract with a major firm was to blame, prompting other companies to reconsider their dealings. Sales plummeted by 40%, most employees started job hunting, and the company's decline accelerated. The general meeting decided the crisis was due to the boss's fault, and he was ousted. His brother is now trying to rebuild the company. According to Dad, this brother is well respected. The company might be reborn into something better. On the condition that the former boss's family no longer be involved, Dad began moves to restart dealings with them. I also heard from Dad that the former boss's family began to lose their possessions, eventually selling their house. I don't know where they went, but I doubt a family accustomed to such wealth could adapt to normal life. In fact, Carol reportedly got a job at a grocery store, acted arrogantly to customers, got into an argument, and was fired within hours, becoming somewhat of a legend. In my personal life, I managed to convince Dad to let me start as a regular employee instead of directly becoming an executive. However, I'm aware that I'll eventually take over the company. So, I balance my everyday tasks with assisting the executive team. Constantly amazed by their innovative ideas that never occur to me, sometimes feeling overwhelmed. But every time I feel like my head is about to explode, Sissy is there by my side, saying,
"Lenore, let's finish this task first. Then we can decide the priority for the next ones."
Her support keeps me grounded. Sometimes the pressure of being the boss's daughter feels crushing, but with Sissy around, I can stay confident and cope. Interestingly, Dad also likes Sissy, and sometimes the three of us go out for drinks. Every time Dad gets tipsy and tells this joke,
"Lenore will be the next president, and Sissy the next executive officer. Don't even think about getting married and retiring, you too."
He often tells this story laughingly. However, what Dad doesn't know is that I'm secretly in a relationship. My desire to get married is still a secret from Dad.